wake up screaming. It was terrifying. And there was this old woman that used to sit at the end of my bed and used to make me count to 300, but I only could ever get to 245. And the sheets would become like waves and they'd be crashing in on me and there'd be all this water and she'd keep pulling me under. And I had that dream for years. And it was Lois who'd comfort me when I'd wake screaming, or Dad would come in. And I'd often say, oh, so-and-so died, or something's going to happen. He'd say, oh, don't say that, don't say that. You mustn't say that. And one day, 8 years ago, I woke to a living nightmare, and nothing has ever been the same. For the first time in years, I'm going home for our birthday. And now it's time to face the guilt that I've carried and to confront the nightmare. I know it's going to be scary, but I do love to go home to our country. For thousands of years, the Bundjalung people have existed in this place. My great-great-great-grandfather saw the arrival of the white settlers. The pioneers massacred men, women and children as they relentlessly destroyed the sacred rainforest. They brought with them sickness and disease, killing thousands of Bundjalung. My great-grandfather was born under this special tree. He was one of the last men from our clan to be fully initiated at Nimbin rocks. This area has a very important place in our culture and our immediate family. In the late 1800s, we were living in fear and were soon forced onto islands where Christian churches were to civilise us. One of these was Cabbage Tree Island. It is where my father and his father were born. My grandfather saw the injustice of the missionary system, and although it was against the law, he took his family off the mission and into the outskirts of Lismore. Dad went off to Sydney to study theology. He was a student minister when he met my mother, who was a Sunday school teacher. They soon fell in love and were married. So Mum came to Lismore as a city girl and people judged her. At that time, nice young white girls didn't marry Aboriginal men.
Old things again now. I was almost going to ring you.
Did you all say hi to Ma? See here? If I was naughty, we'd have to sit there. This was the time out place. Sit there and stare at these walls. I guess she was just hoping these twins were going to be normal, so, you know, she was thrilled when we had 2 arms and 2 legs and all the rest. Over the years, Mum had to adapt to our large extended family and its culture of sharing. She also had to deal with the white women at church who praised her for adopting these poor little black children. But Mum has had a pretty horrible last decade. And it's heartbreaking to see for the first time that Mum is now losing her memory.
You were never down there.
Yeah, we were, Mum.
No, you weren't.
Mum?
You were not.
We did. That was our bedroom down there until we left home. Where else? Don't you remember coming down going, girls, get up, get up? But we grew up in a small country town where you were white or you were black. There was this invisible divide across the town, whether it was in pubs, coffee shops or the local swimming pool. The Mecca Cafe. Of course, this was the place where it did have a colour bar, but we weren't allowed to eat there. We could get takeaway food, and now, of course, we go there all the time, but it's under new owners now, and it's a very groovy, trendy place to eat. But I guess in my mother's day it was quite groovy and trendy as well, but as long as you were white. I can't tell you how many times Lois or I would be told that we should remember who we were. We were mission blacks and we should not think ourselves so uptown, and we should remember our place.
That one of the greatest fraud perpetuated against the native inhabitants of this country
Dad did so many firsts in his life. He was never one to want that national attention. He was just a community person who really lived for his community. You know, when we were kids, he'd go, all right, Saturday, we're going to Evans Head, and we'd be there ready to go to the beach. And 10 o'clock would come, he'd go, oh, look, I just got to nick into town, I'll be back, and then we'd go. 1 o'clock, we'd be sitting there watching the road, waiting for his car to come. 2 o'clock, we'd get the phone call, look, I'll come back soon, we won't make the beach, but I'll take you to the pool, or I'll take you down the river. And 5 o'clock had come, and he'd finally come home. And my poor mother had to deal with us crying and saying it wasn't fair and all the rest of it. From a learning perspective, I loved it. I really wanted to learn. I really wanted to go to university. I really wanted to be a writer, so I was going to do anything it took to fulfill that dream. From a terror level, I was terrified every day I came to this school of what would happen that day to me. My greatest fear was being taken away. Once every few months, all the Aboriginal students would be called out of their classes at Richmond River High. Our uniforms would be checked. We'd be checked to be seeing that we were wearing the right school shoes, that we had books, how many days we had attended, all this. You know, if we had lice, God help us, then we could be taken from our mother and father. Because during this period, of course, I remember one of our cousins, he'd be there every day, and then one day he just wasn't there. And I'd be like, oh, Loie, don't muck up in class, they could take you away. And we'd come home and we'd be crying or saying how bloody unfair it was. And Lois just grabbed my hand and held it and said, it's all right, Sissy, we'll be right, I'll look after you, you know. And that fear lived with me, and I was very suspicious of anyone in authority. And even today, if I'm walking down the street and I see authority, I get this, don't you come near me, this defensiveness. And it's a really hard thing to get rid of, because I hated people like that because they ruled our lives. But you know, I was the good girl and she was the bad, rebellious one. And I guess all that growing up in the church, it had such an effect, you know, that you would go to hell and damnation if you were naughty, and I was really quite aware of that I didn't want to. You know, you were really embarrassed about who you were, and we're coming out and we're going to basketball practice, and Dad was sitting out in the car. These girls go, what do you call a bung driving, you know, a Datsun? And they giggled and they said a thief, and they were pointing to Dad, so I hid behind these bushes. And when I got out and I got in the car, Dad said to me, oh, you're ashamed of your old man? I said, oh no, Daddy, I love you, I'm not ashamed of you. And he goes, well, why'd you hide behind those bushes for 10 minutes? I mean, actually, and I said, well, you don't understand, you don't know what it's like, you don't know how hard it is. And you wanted to be like the blonde popular girls. And Lois had a different edge. She ran amok with the blonde popular girls, but there was something about her that she had that I didn't have. And so I just dug myself in and tried to be invisible and would hide, and I never wanted people to see that I was hurt, or even at home, you know, I was the good girl. I'm the dutiful person, I have to be, otherwise I'll go to hell and damnation. So our careers advisor told us that we would never get a job, that we'd end up pregnant on the mission, and so there was no point in educating us. And so we vowed that we would prove them wrong. As long as I remember, Lois always wanted to be a hairdresser, and when she left high school, that's exactly what she did. Although my dream was to write and become a journalist, my mother told me that nobody would hire an Aboriginal writer, and she convinced me to take on the more secure occupation of nursing. So I went to Sydney and trained to become a nurse. The homesickness was really hard, but I couldn't go home. I had to prove all the doubters wrong. And Lois and I had started to get to know each other as friends without the sibling rivalry. Then one morning I felt the need to call her. Just as the phone rang, it was a message saying Lois had had a car accident and she was in a critical condition with 48 hours to live. Just before our 21st birthday, And you know, our 21st, we were planning, we'd have this big party, we'd then travel overseas together, and so reckless. Like she used to say, live life, you don't know, you never know what's going to happen. And Mum would always be, now Lois, you must start saving. If you think you're going overseas with Rhoda, you must start saving. Yeah, she'd say. We'll be right. I was so frightened to leave in case she woke up. All of a sudden I felt this foot kick me. And she's up, her eyes were open, she was just looking at me, and she was just kicking. That look in her eyes would scare me later on, I think. That was really her, like, what the fuck has happened? What is this, you know? Why are you sitting at the end of my bed looking like me and I'm here, you know, looking like a zombie? We got her into rehabilitation and we'd have her on weekend leave, but we used to have to feed her. She could hardly walk and, you know, we had to do everything, and then she was slowly starting to talk. I tried to make her like me. I remember once she said, stop dressing me like you because I don't want to wear the clothes you wear and I want to be my own person. And I think it took me a long time to realise that she was never going to be the girl she was. And in her place was this person who had very few inhibitions, who many people took advantage of. So it was really funny because I became the protector. I became more confident, and in a way, I took on her personality, or maybe I just found the space to grow. After graduating from nursing, I travelled overseas and lived in London for 6 years. I returned home with a greater awareness of the position of Indigenous people within Australia, and I understood the sacrifice Dad had given to our people. While I was overseas, he had fought very hard to get Nimbin rocks handed back to our people. And Lois used to go out there quite a lot to help him look after the land. The nearby village of Nimbin had become a centre for people exploring spirituality and alternative lifestyles. And Nimbin became a bit of a haven. That community embraced her, didn't treat her differently, treated her equally. So she felt very, very comfortable there, hence why she used to always go to Nimbin virtually every day. In the meantime, I'd moved back to Sydney and began to write and perform plays under the Aboriginal National Theatre Trust. Lois came a couple of times to see me in productions. Every opening night, Dad would never tell me, and I'd hear this at the funny bits, and there would be Dad, and I'd know Dad was out there, because then I'd get really incredibly nervous and think, oh my God, and he just grabbed me and he said, oh, now I see what you're trying to do. And he said, look, sister, the platform for us was the church. The platform for us now is the theatre. This is where we can tell our stories, and we can have a voice, and we can address, you know, the imbalances. In the late 80s, I finally achieved my dream of becoming a journalist. I really felt that I was beginning to continue my father's work of highlighting issues within our community. And it's really interesting, like Dad passed away and I was really quite distraught. You know, I'd lost a friend. And you know, up until then I hadn't been centred. Almost think that when Dad passed on, I got some of that strength of his. My father's death had an enormous effect on Lois. She was very close to Dad, and I think it left an incredible void in her life. And she did end up having 2 children. After Charlie was born, Lois couldn't really cope, so my mother raised him with the help of the family. And it was a few years later that she had Emily. I never realised until I had Jack the pain that she must have gone through when she gave me Emily, and she was on her own. She had a baby 4 days later. She asked me to take this baby because welfare were going to take this baby away. And I wished I knew what I knew as a mother, because I really didn't comfort her. Just to go home alone and cry, and there was no one there for her. And I regret that. I really regret that I didn't stay longer, or I didn't bring her with me, or convince her to come and live with us, or but if onlys, you know. And not just Aboriginal artists, but Australian artists. We have the stage, we have a voice. In 1998, I was working for SOCOG to produce the Indigenous segment of the Sydney Olympic Games opening ceremony. It was an incredibly exciting and intense time of my life. And right in the middle of it, we get a call from my brother Mark, saying he's concerned that Lois is missing. He said they hadn't seen her for 2 days and her groceries were delivered but were still sitting at the front of her house. I basically dropped everything and drove home to Lismore.
She was around here visiting me and she was ready to leave to go home, and it was about 9:15 and it was dark, and she got halfway up the path and I said, "Now Lois, you be careful going home." And she just laughed at me and said, "Oh, don't be silly, Mum. Nothing had ever happened to me." And that was on the Thursday night. And that's the very last we saw of her. She didn't come round on Friday and didn't come round Saturday. So Mark went round to check and found she hadn't been back to the house.
But I remember driving up here and going to her house and, you know, breaking in to see if I could find her. And there was the shopping still outside. I think we pulled it inside. But there was no evidence of a fight in the house. There was no evidence of anything in the house. It's just on the right. It's the last house in this street. The shopping was just outside the door, and, you know, Mark was convinced then that something had happened to her because food was too precious. She would have taken her shopping inside had she come home, or she would have made sure the neighbours or someone knew if she wasn't going to be home to take that shopping in. Okay, we're coming up to Nimbin Rocks now, and this is where my brother is. They're regenerating the area, and this is a sign to welcome people to country and to look after country. And hiya, Marky.
Hiya.
Good, darling.
See ya.
Oh.
Yeah, at first I didn't think much of it because she'd stay out here at Nimbin Rocks. About I think the 4th or 5th day, it was, well, you know, I better go and tell the police. Went down and they said, oh, well, you know, they knew of Lois and said, you know, she's probably just around somewhere, not to worry too much, you know. And then I went to the bank on a payday, and she knew Lois well, and she said, but I can tell you I haven't seen Lois today. So in other words, she hadn't been in. And that's when it really hit home. Yeah. So that's when we knew something was really wrong.
He'd gone down to the police station to do a missing persons report, and they said she has to be missing for 24 hours. And he said, yes, she has, but they didn't file that report. The intimidation of the police, he's well known to the police. It was a very difficult thing for him to do. But meanwhile, we had gone out to Nimbin, we'd walked around putting up posters, and then of course during that time as we were putting up the posters, people were coming up thinking, oh sorry, you're not Lois. No, I'm Sister Rhoda. I'm sort of wondering if you've seen Lois. And so we tried to get her last whereabouts. I literally went into every single shop, house along this main street, knocking on the doors saying, have you seen my sister? Here's a picture of her, but most of the people knew her anyway. So we sort of figured out that she'd gone for coffee at this coffee house in Lismore where she always went, and then she took a trip in a white car from there. The guy gave her a lift to Nimbin. And then she was seen by the police officer at Nimbin, who remembers it because he was going on holidays. And he looked out the window and he saw Lois across the road. She'd missed the bus and she was hitchhiking, and it was 5 p.m. And he looked up again and she was gone. she'd just gone. So he just went, oh, great, she must have got a lift. We walked all the way along here, trying to find if their handbag had been dropped, if a shoe or anything at all that we could find. We walked right to the outskirts and found nothing. But of course you'd think that would be something that the police would do, but they didn't. I wished I had a crystal ball. It was frustrating because really that is what the police do. Try and finalise the first 24 hours of their disappearance and what their last movements were. But we did that for the police. Just because Lois was Lois, they didn't bother to investigate or take it seriously. They basically said, oh look, she's a black fella. She goes out to Nimbin all the time. She's probably just gone walkabout. I hate that they think like that. I find that quite racist, but... Oh, I hate this rain! After we put the person's report in, then they called us all down. And it was in those portable buildings that they took us individually into different ones and questioned us. And so we had to account for our movements of that day. Particularly my younger brother, who they had held as a suspect.
I was a bit surprised about this one. He came up nicely and said to me, Mark, where's your car? And I said, oh, it's round at a mate's, this guy's place, getting some panel beating work done on it so I can get it registered. And he said, oh, we just need to borrow it for a little while to check it out. And he said, you know, like, to rule you out as being a suspect, you know, which we have to do, you know. So that was fair enough. But they took the car, and 6 months later I went down and asked them, was there any chance of getting the car back? They said, which car? I was supposed to have it for 6 hours and they had it for 6 months. Finally got the car back. But, yeah, so they tested the car.
What was the attitude from the police towards you?
Oh, pretty good towards me. Yeah, they were real good towards me, actually. A couple of them treated me pretty well.
But they didn't file the missing person.
Well, you know, I don't want to blame, you know, the police. Of course I have. But it's not their fault.
I am really angry with the police. I don't think they did enough in the very first few days. And I don't still think they've done enough. So yeah, I get that.
You know, you have your point of view.
Yeah. Well, I think we all deal with it differently, don't we? You know? That was pretty awful. Again, the police were sort of giving us the impression that she was out in Nimbin somewhere, that she'd probably taken a holiday, or that she would, you know, was just wanting time out. So I think during that, you were hoping for the bit, like obviously I was thinking, oh yeah, God, I'm going to kill her when I see her. But geez, I hope she's out in Nimbin somewhere and she's run off with some bloke and having a good time. She's going to come back in a month and say, what's the matter? I can do what I want. And you hope. I was at a bit of a loss. I was on my own. I had Emily, you know. So this became the thing that I was looking for answers. There's a hurt that goes, doesn't she want to know us? Doesn't she know that she's causing us pain? Why hasn't she contacted Emily? Emily's birthday came and went. Why didn't Lois contact us? And so I just kept going back all the time. Just walking through Nimbin, hoping something might trigger someone. And in all that lead up, we would be at the police station daily. They never gave us compassion. that we had actually lost a sister, we were more or less treated as being nuisances because we were wondering what was happening with our sister's case. See sign, Aboriginal Bora Ring. This Bora Ring is another very special place to my family. My dad fought hard to protect it. And when he would bring us out here as children, you could really see the indent where over thousands of years both men and women would dance. I used to come up here and sit cross-legged and think that somehow the spirits would contact me and I'd get in contact and find out what happened. But that never happened. But I wonder, you know, there's so much pain in our community, not just our family, but our whole community. There've been, you know, we have other cousins who have been missing, presumed murdered. I wonder why sometimes. Is it payback? Or have we not looked after country properly enough? Are we being paid back spiritually? Or is it just reality in the way it is in the 21st century? I don't know. And 6 months after Lois went missing, we get a message from Mum saying they had found her body. There was a guy who was bushwalking and he needed to go to the toilet. Thank God he was someone from the city, because a normal country person would have just gone to the toilet, you know. So he had walked in 25, 30 metres into the bush, which was thick scrub, and went to go to the toilet, and there was the body. From the way that she was found and the way that she was bound, a lot of time was spent on it. So this is a very methodical, premeditated murder. And it was brutal and it was horrible, and she was held for approximately 8 to 10 days from the time that my brother went down to the police station to report her missing, and not even a police file was issued. 8 to 10 days she was alive, being tortured, and obviously used as a sex slave or something.
My doctor sent me to a psychologist because I couldn't understand why I wasn't angry at the person who had killed her, and especially the way that she'd been killed. Yeah, there wasn't any anger. I didn't feel any anger. I just wanted to know why. I just want to sit down and, matey, what happened? You know, what? You know? That was just the first one. I just needed to know that. What happened? You know?
Do you think about it?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah.
I can't remember Frank's funeral. I can't remember Lois's funeral or my mother's funeral. And yet they tell me I was at all of them. Well, it's a great loss, you know, if you lose any one of your children. But there's no use dwelling on that because it's not going to make it any different. We just have to treasure the memories we had with her. And this is how it ended.
As time went by, I got a lot of strange calls and heard all kinds of stories about what may have happened to Lois, but there were no answers to all the questions. So I started grasping at straws and blaming myself for not being there to look after my sister. And I started to feel guilty because I was supposed to be her protector, but I was off living my own life. I don't know why I beat myself up. Maybe it's easier just to take the blame but eventually it eats away at you. A few months ago, I had a call from a clairvoyant, and she said that she had Lois with her. But you see, when Lois's body was found, there was no head. And the police said, oh, that's okay, the head's the thing to go. Animals, wild animals take the head. It's easy to dislodge, and that's why. Whereas this woman said that the reason she had Lois with her is that Lois still thinks she's alive, and that she's at the back of this house because she's standing beside her head. Her head's in a garbage bag in a laundry at the back of this house. We're going to, forget what the name of the road is, but I know exactly the street. And this is Amy, the clairvoyant, who rang me, said that Lois's body was where we found it, but her head was in the backyard of this particular house, which has a laundry at the back, and it's 2 guys live in it, 2 students, and the head is still there in a garbage bag. Now, look, I don't know, this could be absolute, who knows. But I sort of believe this woman because she said a couple of other things that seemed really, that people didn't know about, and I actually think that she was telling the truth. And I guess there's part of me that's been quite hesitant to go and look. But I've told my girlfriends, and they're all ready with their spades, and their husbands are ready with their spades to go dig this place up. But I'll just go past it and see. Now, the number's either 18, 23 or 25, but it either has a grey mailbox or the laundry's grey or something like that. So, and when she told me this street, right, I was shocked because it is such a flash street. Have I got the right street? Oh, I've got the wrong street. No, wrong street. Wrong street. It's the next one over. 25. No, it's a green letterbox. Oh no, that's 24. 25 is further down. 18. Right there. I'm going to park. The mailbox is green or grey. Can I just go look at number 18? I haven't done that. It probably sounds so far-fetched, but that 18 has got shovels at the back and there's a grey garbage bag sitting at the back. Sorry, do I sound like a mad woman? See, that looks like a rented house, doesn't it, that one? And it's all dilapidated. Oh, it just looks so much like she described. I sound like a mad woman, don't I? It's all I've got to go on. No, my instincts tell me it was probably a couple of people. Just from what I know of what happened to her, I find it would be really hard for one person to methodically do all that. She would have put up a huge fight, you know, with someone holding her. There's no way she would have not gone without a fight. And I guess that's where my anger comes in, to think that my sister was alive, probably screaming in pain, or had she got to a stage where she would tolerate the pain because she was in shock, or you know what happens to bodies, I do, when you're a nurse. You know what happens to bodies when they're hung or they're in fear or whatever, where their blood pools, where they're incontinent through fear. And I'm sorry, but I think of all that because I'm a nurse. I know how the body operates, so I think of all those terrible things and think of her being still alive, calling out for her life. And we, meanwhile, are trying to convince the Lismore police to putting a missing persons report in and perhaps investigating the fact that our sister had gone missing. We've had falling outs in our family. We've been divided. My father would die at the divisions. That has probably stemmed from us grieving and mourning and blaming, because you blame people. Why? And you turn racist. You think these fucking white people did this to her. Well, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was white and black. It was a man that did this to her. My little Emily, my God. I still don't know what this has done to her. She was 3 years old when this happened, and I left her because I didn't want her to see me lose it when I came to see where her mother had been murdered. Emily was like Lois was before the accident. Oh, she was feisty, she was strong, she was my spirited little girl. And when I returned, there was this nervous, frightened little girl that had seen it on the news and had heard that some horrendous crime had happened to her mother. So she used to have images of her mother's throat being slashed. And that's what she used to say. Oh, Mummy's throat was slashed. They got a knife and they slashed it. I didn't think this would happen until she was about 15. She's only just turned 11. And she said, "You're not my mother. I'll do it because you're not my mother." Now, I knew that was going to come one day in a rebellious period, but I didn't expect it to come so young, and I didn't expect to be so hurt by it. It really tore at my heart. I went into the bathroom and I was like, well, Jesus, all I've tried to do is my best. I've changed my life. My everything for this girl, and I'm not your mother. And so with this anger, I went back out to Emily and I said, "Emily, you are my twin sister's daughter. Therefore, you are my daughter. You are my daughter. I am in your blood as much as you are in my blood, and I am your mother. I have raised you since the day you were born, so you will never say that again." And she was quite shocked, I think, because she could see that I was really hurt. And of course, she didn't mean it. She just said it in a fit of, We're going into the state forest, and I see this as her sort of burial place, really. It stopped that feeling of where is she. She was known as a disappearance. Now she was known as a murder. And I remember looking around thinking, oh, well, at least this is quite, it's a forest, it's, nature, it's Bundjalung country. At least she is at rest in somewhere that's, on our country. So the fire trail's on our left. I think there was a few... Ooh, what was that? That scared me. I'm a bit on, it's funny, isn't it? A little bit, get spooked. I don't get spooked, but... You see, this is what amazes me, how far he drove in. He could have... That's why I think whoever did this knew this place, because look how far we've been driving. There are hundreds of spots you could have thrown a body. Now, look, here's a fire trail, and there it is. Hey, isn't that amazing? I knew to stop there. You go around that corner, go down a hill, and it's just there. Okay. I guess I was looking around going, okay, so, Loie, this is where you are now, you know? Oh, I got all spooked then. You can see it's all new and it started to grow back. And he's gone all the way through here to go to the toilet. Right there where that... Oh, did you hear that? Did you hear that? Oh, God, I'm scared. God, I spooked myself. Oh, God. Oh. Hey, he would have been walking like through bush like this to go to the toilet. Bizarre. Thank God he was shy. Thank God. Could you imagine doing it at night with a body? Okay, that's where her legs were, where the end of her body was. And it was here. And he's gone like that and looked down and he was right over the top of her. And this is where her body was. It's a needle in a bloody haystack, is it? Just amazing. But those trees have grown incredibly. How long has that been? Listen to me, I am so spooked. I can't really spook because I almost expect something to come running at me or, you know, Lo to come and grab me. I just feel like it's got, you know, why dump her here, you know? Why do I get so spooked? I just remember going, oh my God, this is it. This is it. She's like, she's never coming back. This is it. Her body is in that coffin. I'd just like to know what they did with her and how she was and what she said in those last few breaths, hours, days of her life, you know? When we had the coroner's thing and they sort of suggested that she'd been held for a period of time, probably the first 8 days or something before she was actually... That hurt. I got really sad there because I could just see her face. Those images of like knowing that those ligature marks were on her and her hanging, that torments me a bit. I can't even remember what I was doing on that day she disappeared, really. I can't even remember. But I feel that something broke in me. I lost something. We were twins and I can't get that back. I don't know where it is or what it is, but I've lost something. So I put on a front and go through life, and sometimes when I'm feeling sorry for myself, I go back to being that 15-year-old in the basketball court where I thought the white girls wanting me on the team and they were waving to someone behind. And I felt crushed. I felt so small. And my sister came in and she punched their lights out for me. I get saddened by my sister who was murdered. And I guess I've got to put it back into perspective. What about all those people that were massacred at Ballina Beach? You know, women who lost their children and their husbands and their mothers and their grandmothers. And so I guess, you know, dealing with one death isn't, you know... See, I try and justify everything. You know, crying isn't going to bring her back, is it? It's only going to make me feel a little bit better, but I just get really scared that I want to cry, I want to scream, I want to throw myself down on that ground and cry like so everything is out of me, but then I get really scared that I'm never going to get out of that. You want to face that way, eh? There you go, Loie. Our bushcraft cross. Okay, wherever she was murdered, that's probably where her soul left her, right? But here she was found, so this is sort of, I guess, where I feel the closest. Oh, God, I sit here, I've done things, you know, like, please come to me, Lo, come to me, give me a sign. You know, when we came out the first time, there was these willy wagtails sitting here, and it's sitting here and it's dancing with its tail and it's jumping around, and it was through the day. So willy wagtail through the day is good, it's like a message. And then another one came, and then another one, and then it sort of got dark and then they flew away. Sorry. I'm sorry. I feel like I've opened up something. I feel like I don't think I've ever been this honest about it, to be honest. And it's really scary. You know, I guess I just got to move on, haven't I? I mean, I've just got to place my faith in the justice system and that the police will one day follow a lead and they'll find these people, or they'll confess on their deathbeds, or they'll tell an inmate in jail, or just got to accept it.
I don't know.
Now, I would love one. Thank you all very much for being here. It really, honestly, means the world to me.
You've already had a go. Always her friend. She never failed in a friendship. And we would get in my ducks and bluebirds and go to Hornsey.
What? No. They were in this photo and they're both like really...
And
in their conversation for 3 or 4 months. Then the work... The old woman no longer sits at the end of my bed. I haven't had that nightmare for years. But that number, 245, still haunts me. It's the time I usually wake up in the middle of the night and I'll go in and look at the children as they sleep. And I'll get all teary because I think of all those stories you've heard about women who have lost their children or their children were taken. And I look and I think, how lucky are we that we don't live in that time now when they could have come in and taken them away. But I look at Emily and I see my sister and it tops me up and it gets me through life. And then I get really teary because I sit there thinking, I've got this for life. How do I ever repay that? We were told we would never make it. We were told it's not what Aboriginal people do. And I've tried to defy all of that. And maybe I feel guilty that I see my cousins in despair and hurt and pain. Or when I think of our great-grandmothers who saw the water turn to blood and smelt the smell of death. Maybe over the years, this country has taught us to blame ourselves for our nightmares, to shift the guilt of atrocity to the survivors who live on despite the ghosts that continue to haunt us. I now know what happened to my sister was not my fault, and so now maybe I can try to move on, at least a little.